Hey, are you there?
Oh my God, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
I am so sorry. I was on my computer because I thought that would work better, and apparently you can't do that on your computer.
That's okay.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Yeah,
Technology. That's great. That's
wow. You
no
know, we're
worries.
we're really evolved when you can do things on your phone that you can't do on your laptop.
Yeah, that makes little to no sense whatsoever. But it's par for the course because the first time Josh and I ever did anything to this effect, we used a cardboard box and a lapel microphone and attached the lapel microphone to the cardboard box flap so that both of us could speak at the same time.
That is fantastic.
So it's only been 15 years and we're still struggling to learn technology.
I don't think we ever will fully learn it at this point.
No, not at all. I don't think I think the more things evolve, the worse it's going to be to try to get on that learning curve. But oh man, it's so great to actually hear your voice. I don't think I've actually talked to you since we were in Erie. Or no, not in Erie, in Vegas.
Yeah, that sounds right. It's been forever.
Very good. So I'm hoping that a couple other people are going to be joining us, but they were having problems as well. So once I figured out it's the issue is the phone versus the computer, I don't understand why Twitter would not make it um, function via the computer just as well as the phone. But
Yeah, that almost seems like there could be accessibility issues with that because what if somebody has, a need? I don't know, I'm spitballing here, but what if somebody has a need to use a computer? It's also kind of, I feel like, kind of classist because not everyone has a smartphone.
yeah,
Granted, not everyone has a computer too, but you can also go to the library and use a computer.
exactly.
You can use a smartphone at the library.
Yeah. So I mean, that's I think that fits very well with the topic that we all kind of decided on would start this, which was how has disabilities affected you, and whether you have a physical disability or invisible disability or no disability at all. I think there are still some things that like today, uh, creep up that show that it's still not a perfect. Uh, yeah, accessibility is not a perfect thing available for everybody quite yet.
Agreed.
Uh, so this may just be a tribute to Josh at this point. I don't know. Um, just kind of wanted to, see where everybody was, and um, yeah, just kind of reintroduce everybody. Like it's been such a long time since Josh and I did, a podcast, and with his passing and what was it, April now?
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's been challenging for me to kind of keep the torch burning, so to speak. But you really kind of latched on to that, and it kind of motivated me to keep this thing going, just because of you, how much interest you had in learning about accessibility issues from a non-disabled standpoint.
Well, I appreciate that. I think, um, it was really Josh who first opened my eyes to, looking at life through the perspective of somebody who has physical disabilities, because, like you said, I don't have any physical disabilities. And suddenly realizing that, I have some privileges in living in a world that is made for me. And my world is not made for everybody. I live in a two-story townhome with a basement. It's in no way accessible. Little things like that, you start noticing just how inaccessible some things are. And then like, maybe it doesn't affect me personally, but I realize how it affects other people. And so I'm still working on that. And I really appreciate all of the help and patience that you've shown me, just, trying to kind of unlearn all of my kind of built-in biases
Right.
because of my own experiences, and sharing your experiences. It's been really helpful, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, it's funny because one thing that's stood out to me again, this was kind of I think the anniversary of when we were all together in Erie and
Yes.
just trying to get Josh up those steps.
Yeah. Yeah, that was, he bitched about those steps so much. And I mean, he had every right to. Um, but he always climbed them anyway.
Yeah, and that's kind of what you're forced to do. I don't want to say forced to do, but you can you can either bitch about it or you can go up the steps, and he always managed in a world that wasn't built for him, always managed to find a way to make it work.
Yes.
And that's no fault of your own. Like it's not like you put the steps there. Like
No, but it's much easier for me to find a place to live because I don't have to think about whether or not a place is physically accessible either.
right,
So,
right.
it's again just showing kind of that privilege. Not that I asked for it, but I absolutely benefit from, again, living in a world that's made for me.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, to be perfectly honest, I being on crutches, it is a weird middle ground because I'm not fully disabled, but I'm not fully able-bodied either.
Yeah, you're like kind of like Schrodinger's cat, I feel like.
Yeah, I'm like a pseudo gimp. I'm just kind of I'm not fully one thing or the other. I'm just this weird in between thing. And
Right.
growing up, I lived in a 2-story home. My bedroom was on the second floor. Like there was nothing accessibly accommodated for me
Right.
growing up, and that was just pure doctors telling my parents, well, don't coddle him, don't make anything easier for him. He's got to learn how to how to navigate this world. And so I think they took that to
Mm,
maybe one extreme um, than necessary.
yeah.
But it is it's I didn't know any different. So um, to me it was just like, okay, well, bedroom's upstairs. That's where that's where I go.
Right.
But yeah, it's just it's an interesting, and I tell people this almost daily. When you have a disability, you're always thinking about it. There's never, at least in my experience, there's never a moment when you're not thinking, okay, how am I going to navigate this venue, this building? Is this restaurant accessible? What kind of tables are there? Like, is there space to navigate a wheelchair? Are there restrooms accessible? I can't tell you how many times, Josh and I would go out and they wouldn't have like an accessible stall. Like it's just
Right.
like this gringy, dungy, insert adjective here, just not accessible, not up to code,
Hmm.
hole in the wall place. And it's like, well, you know, what do you do in those situations? And for most people, that's not a concern for them.
Right. Our biggest concern is, oh, gross. It's
Yeah,
yucky.
it's yucky. I don't want
Yeah.
to go there, but for somebody that you know, has a mobility impairment, it's they don't have a choice, and it's I I mean, not to be graphic or anything to that effect, but I remember when I first had Josh over when I was still living at home and in my parents' house. Again, it's a home that is not built for a wheelchair, so there was no getting him inside my my house. So,
Hmm.
you know, he had to go across the street into the field to do what he needed to do.
Right.
And me, I'm like, I feel so bad because, here I am inviting somebody into my home that I realize can't access it the way that they need to.
Right.
And I'm sure the same for you. Like when we were visiting, it's like, well, man, it's you figure out how to make it work, and we all did, and we all had a great time, and it was a great night, and one that will forever stand out to me. But you think, like, in the moment, like, all right, well, this is a challenge. How am I going to figure it out?
Right, right. And as the host, you're going, "Ugh, I feel so bad.
Yeah,
Like, but what else can you do?
yeah, and it's one of those things where you don't know until you're presented with that situation. Like, I'm sure, um, I'm interested to find out, like, from your perspective, what things you like, what makes itself present and visible to you now, like in your observations. Because I know you had mentioned something to me about, I guess, housing and how housing isn't really accessible. And yeah, so just kind of, from your perspective, what are things that maybe you're becoming more privy to, as far as
Yeah.
what challenges might be out there.
Well, and one of the one of the first things I remember messaging Josh after we moved right before Pennsylvania shut down for COVID back in 2020. And I remember telling him, I'm so excited because you can get into this house. Like there's a main level, ground level, and I was like, You're gonna have like once like you can come in the back door if the ground like the backyard isn't too soggy or anything,
Mhm.
and you'll just have like one bump up, or if you come in the front, you're gonna have like two things you're gonna have to kind of navigate, two small steps, one up to the like front patio, but and one to get inside the door. But like compared to the 17 steps I had out front at the old place, it's
Right.
nothing.
Hmm.
Um, so unfortunately, he never got to visit our
Right.
place now. But it was such a I don't know, like such a matter of pride for me that I had
Hmm.
a place that he could more comfortably visit.
Right.
And he wouldn't have to, scoot up the steps backwards or anything. Like I was just so excited for that. And having, a bathroom, like unfortunately my bathroom is not wheelchair accessible still, but it's at least on the same floor and like he wouldn't have to do stairs or anything. I know he's got had ways of figuring things out, but yeah, so that was one thing that really stuck out to me when we moved was just I finally have a semi-accessible space, it's way better than all those stairs. Something else, I can't remember if we've talked about this, but one of the playgrounds that we like to go visit, Hannah and I visit, it's like I don't know, a 20-minute drive or so from here, so we don't go super often. But it has a lot of accessible equipment. So one of the swings is designed for people who may not be able to hold their backs up straight on their own. Um, I'm sorry, I hope that's not calling my dog. There we go. Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, sorry about that.
That's okay.
So it's got like an accessible swing. It's got like I don't know some sort of like merry-go-round almost, but it looks like it's designed for a small wheelchair. Um,
Hmm.
so, just things like those, I like noticing those now and calling them out to Hannah too. We were recently down in Edinburgh and we're at a little park there next to the lake, and the picnic tables there have an extended side on them, presumably for wheelchairs. I mean, that's the only thing I can think of you use it for is like somebody already has a place to sit, but they still need a
Right.
table. So I point that out to her, and I, always try to point out what I notice because I think it's important that we use our privileges as people with able bodies to say, hey, things need to be better for people who aren't like us, who don't, have that privilege of like perfectly functioning legs or something like that. People who are in wheelchairs need more than I need, and we should be advocating for that.
And as someone who has a dual role in using crutches and using a chair, I mean, I appreciate that. I appreciate people that aren't in my situation picking up the mantle and carrying it, and you're doing that in more ways than just with disabilities, and you're doing that with the current affairs with the women's rights, and so beyond proud to see that, and your involvement and how that has been passed down
Down
to
to
daughter, and how she's involved doing that, this little tiny human. It's just, she's well beyond her years, and has you to, um, you know, to essentially really thank for that because, yeah, it starts with the parents. I get so many kids come up to me, "What's wrong with you? What happened to you?" You know, and the parents, you know, are mortified. I'm like, no, kids are curious. Kids want to know, and you give them an answer that satisfies them, then they're on doing the next thing, and it's fine. But you know, the parents, I think, a lot of times don't realize how much of an impact their response can have towards how the children then react. Like if the
Absolutely.
parents are reacting like, oh no, this is a negative thing, well then the kids are going to look at that as scary and negative.
Right. And I think, I mean, two comments there. First, you said it starts with the parents, and KB, you're absolutely right. And, knowing that I referred to Josh as mom for years, it kind of makes me smile that you say that because it really did start with him. It started with my mom,
Hmm.
Josh. So, but, that's such a good point too about parents cringing. And I know as a parent of a young child, I've had my moments where I have cringed because I'm like, oh my God, don't say that. But I've also learned that, instead of cringing, now I say, hey, let's, if it's a good time, if it looks like a good situation where we can ask, try to find a way to ask without being offensive. Like, hi, can you tell us what happened? Or something like that. Or maybe if it's not a good place to ask, I'll just try to explain it as best as I can observe. Like,
Hmm.
even so, there was a kid, this is a little bit different. There was a kid at her summer camp, and Hannah was saying, Mom, this kid, I'm going to call him Steve. This kid, Steve, is just so annoying and he's so loud all the time. And I said, honey, I think that Steve maybe has a brain that works different than ours. I'm thinking he's like high functioning autism, maybe.
Okay.
Um, I'm not sure again, but that's just based on what I've observed. And so I kind of said, so his brain works differently. He's perceiving things differently than you are, differently than what I perceive. And that's okay. We have to let him experience it in his own way. So in the same way, if we see somebody who has evident physical disabilities, okay, it looks like maybe this is what happened, or maybe they're using this tool to help them get around. And this is why. And that's okay. They are still just as important as we are. They are still completely, whole people on their own, and they deserve all of the rights and all of the empathy and all of the um, fairness and equality that we can give them.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. The fairness and equality. It's, you know, one of my pet peeves is, you know, the term special needs or special education, and it's to me, and I don't know how you feel about this, and I'm interested on your thoughts. I don't look at those as special needs. Those are just human needs, and they may be different in the sense of, okay, you may need an adaptive device in order to do something that somebody else without a disability can do, but that doesn't make it special. That just makes it different.
Right. Yeah, I completely agree. The word special gives it kind of this oh, what's the word I want? Like stigma.
Yes.
And as a result, I think that, I think that the able-bodied group has dealt with that stigma for generations. And as a result, there's that like almost generational embarrassment that, oh my God, don't ask them any questions. And we don't talk about people who have mental health issues, people who have physical disabilities. And as a result, this this group of people who are just the same as me, except that maybe, they need a wheelchair, um, they are suddenly seen as a completely different class of person. And we see that even in our society with the way that people with disabilities can be paid less than minimum wage and things like that. And so it's been going on. I don't know how long it's been going on, but that's just the way I see it, knowing how I was raised, seeing how my grandparents were. Um, there's something happened at some point. Maybe it's been going on for centuries, but people with that horrible term special needs have now been declassified as full human beings, and they're less than.
Yes.
And I hate that. And I think what's important is, that we continue using the language like people with physical disabilities, because they're people first. You're a person first. I'm a person first. And then everything else is just kind of added on. Like I'm a person with some mental health issues. You're a person with some physical disabilities. You're a person. And that's what we should see the world as people, not special needs or disabled.
Yeah, I could not have said it any better than it really is. Just you know, I mean, there has been a push to modify the language of people first, and you're not a disabled person, you're a person with a disability, or you're um, a person in a wheelchair, you're not a wheelchair user, or whatever the situation is. And yeah, I think, I mean, I'm surprised Josh and I haven't been canceled just because of the word cripple. You know, I've certainly had enough people, tell me that they don't like the name that we use, but again, um, it's all about the context,
Right.
and I've always explained, well, you might not like the term cripple, but the purpose of that was, one, to get your attention, and
Mhm.
two, to show that you can be quote unquote crippled and still be active and creative and you know be
You
a
mean you can be a human?
yes, you can be human and um, be a contributing member of society.
And, I think going off what you said about being a contributing member of society, like I feel like, especially in our society, that's part of why people with disabilities get such a hard time, is because people's value in the society, and forgive me if I'm going down a rabbit hole and feel free to tell me to stop, but people in our society um, are treated, their value is equivalent to what they produce,
Yes.
right? So I produce X amount at work, and I'm a full-time mom and I just finished school. And so people may see me as high value, but the fact is, somebody who maybe can't work because they have a physical disability or a crippling mental health issue, they still have just as much value. It's just in a different way. And the fact that we tend to place so much value only on what is produced that other people benefit from, that's tangible, is, I think, really the downfall of our society. We've gone and kind of capitalized on people to the point that we are currency. And so the more I give back to society, the more currency I'm worth, in a sense. And so people who can't work a full 40 hours a week because they have any sort of issue, or they have a person at home they have to take care of, they're seen as less valuable
Yes.
because they're not producing something tangible for society. Even though, what we're doing right now, this may not produce anything tangible for society, but I would say it's a great conversation. And we're both, like, our conversations, we always learn so much from one another. Maybe that's not something tangible that we can hold in our hands, but there's so much growth and value to our conversations. So I don't know, like, bringing it back though, I think that the devaluing of humans by linking production to their worth is really one of the core issues with the the struggle to change the society's view and their perception of people with disabilities.
Yes, I could not agree more with that. And to touch on that, I I know you've been supporting this endeavor that Josh and I started for quite a while, and aware of are aware of all the things that I post out from a news standpoint. I try to share as much um, newsworthy information as far as it relates to the disability community. And I'm sure you've probably seen things that I've posted about, um, sheltered workshops and how they're designed to give people with disabilities a chance to work and still kind of keep their benefits, because if you're disabled, you can't have over a certain number. You can't your liquid assets can't be over a certain number, so you have to have a certain uh, value in order to maintain your health benefit needs, and so they pay you based upon the work you do. So if you have somebody who is not disabled and they complete 300 pieces of work in an hour, and you have somebody who is disabled who maybe completes 50 in an hour, well, yeah, the person who completes 300 is going to be paid a lot more than the person that just completed 50. And again, talking to the value point, we, in that sense, are devaluing people with disabilities. We're not giving them the incentive, um, to feel like they're actually contributing. It's almost like a backhanded compliment, so to speak. It's like, oh, here's an opportunity to work, but we're not going to pay you what the position really calls for. And I've had that happen myself. I've had employers to my face say, well, isn't there something in place where because you're disabled, I can pay you less? And I'm like, okay, well, I know where I'm not, interested in working now.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's frustrating to me. So, I'm a manager. I don't have anybody with physical disabilities on my team right now. But, to me, people should be paid a living wage regardless. If
Yes.
I'm going to employ them for a significant amount of their waking time, then they should be paid enough to have, a relatively comfortable lifestyle. I'm not saying they're going to be eating lobster and steak every night, but you know, regardless of output to some point, if you are putting out 100% your abilities, then you should be compensated fairly. Whether, one person's ability is 50 and another person's ability is 200, they're still working to the best of their abilities. And I understand the business owner side of it to some degree where, you want to obviously be profitable. But at what point do we sacrifice our humanity for profits? And obviously in America, it happens way too often. That's kind of what this whole country has been built on.
Mhm.
But people with disabilities shouldn't be kept from being able to pay their bills, especially while they're working. But even without, just because they have a physical disability that keeps them from being less productive, perhaps, than me without a physical disability. And I think that just the idea, and I remember Josh, he had some issues where he, I guess, had to go back and forth with like the disability, like payments and stuff, and things were so weird. And just the fact that, like, you said about having not too many assets or anything, and you can't make too much money or else you lose like your benefits from the state. That doesn't it again, just to me, it devalues humanity. Because you shouldn't, especially you. Okay, first of all, nobody should have to worry about healthcare. I am a huge proponent for universal healthcare.
Mhm.
I digress. But people shouldn't have to worry about that, especially people who may have a harder time finding employment because of a physical disability. Like, for me, it is not too difficult to go find another job necessarily because I don't have something that's going to make me perhaps less productive to a manager's eyes, right?
Mhm.
Regardless of what my 100% is, whether it's 50 or 200 output, but I'll have an easier time. But somebody who who's probably going to have a more difficult time. I think that there shouldn't be this, oh, you can only make so much money, at least at such a low bar. I mean, that's that's nothing.
Hmm.
And I think the system is so backwards, and it's almost designed to kind of keep people with disabilities poor.
Oh, I'll 100% absolutely agree. They're the plans that they have in place are without a doubt designed to keep you stagnant and stationary and unable to climb the proverbial ladder. I mean, I can't tell you, um, and I find it hard to speak for him now that he's not here to be able to elaborate on it. But you know, knowing Josh the way that I knew him and that you knew him, it wasn't just a matter of him being able to work. It was him being able to get to work. Like he didn't drive, so he's relying on public transportation or friends or family and spouse to get him to work. So again, the world at large is not designed to help people with disabilities have full autonomy over their life.
Right. And that is almost a requirement in this country. I mean, to be quote unquote successful, like you need a car. You need your own car. You need to be able to drive to work. You need to, of course, be able to work 40 hours a week, whatever shift your employer demands of you. Um, and that is not a beneficial, it's not really even a workable situation for so many people with disabilities. Like I remember when I hired Josh at AT&T, like I don't think either of us thought he'd really like the job, but more importantly, it was close enough that in the summer he could wheel to work.
Hmm.
And in the winter, since I was going out that way, a lot of times I could pick him up or I could drop him off. So, and even if not, like his bus ride was significantly shorter. I remember when he worked at Target and he's like, yeah, I had to leave 2 hours before my shift so that I could get here in time because of the bus routes. And it's like, what?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm so privileged that I can't imagine having potentially a 4 hour commute every day to get to work, especially on the bus.
Right.
I just get in my car and I drive where I need to go. And it's something that I think people in my position don't really consider, or if they do, I think they tend to use that as more um, validity of people with physical disabilities being less than human. Because,
Hmm.
oh, well, they have to ride the bus, but that's okay because they're not really, they're just, and I
Yeah.
might be completely wrong about that. Like, I would love to be wrong about that. I'm kind of just going off how I was raised and how I saw my parents and grandparents treat other people.
Hmm. Yeah. And it's interesting because I had actually forgotten that you hired Josh. I forgot how that relationship, developed and how that friendship started. So yeah, so he worked for you said Sprint, was it?
It was AT&T.
Oh, AT&T. Yeah, I mean, and I mean, I know I'm interested, and if you can't speak to it, that's fine. Um, from a hiring standpoint, I've often wondered, at least for myself, uh, wondering how much of the physical disability and biases come into play when the hiring decision needs to be made. So I'm just, I don't want to say I'm proud that you hired him because that's not accurate. I mean, I'm glad that you hired him, but I'm glad that, uh, no, I want to make sure I say this the right way. I'm glad you were able to see beyond the chair and know that he had more to offer than, maybe somebody else in a similar situation would just see the chair and wonder, oh, I don't know how this is going to work. And that, you worked with him to make it work.
Well, it's funny you say that because one of the things that first made me think about hiring him was actually the fact that we had a sitting desk at
Okay.
that office, at that store, and I was like, oh, like that's a perfectly accessible desk for somebody in a wheelchair.
Hmm.
So like it kind of just fell together. I feel like giving me props for seeing beyond the chair maybe is going a little too far because I absolutely saw the chair, but I saw a place for the chair.
Right.
And I knew we had decent sized bathrooms in the back. Like it was a very good building, I think, for him to work in. The sidewalks were they had accessible areas, and there were restaurants right around the area where you could grab food without having to go too far. It was a really convenient spot for him to be, I think,
Okay.
compared to Target at least, which, was he could only work certain positions because, you can't be a cashier at a standing desk if you're sitting all the time. Um, so things like that. But yeah, I just and it was really close to him too. I was like, huh, this would work out really well for him if he's interested. So yeah, it's kind of it just all fell together really well, I think. But
It,
it
it's funny. Like I'm getting, and maybe it's silly, but like I'm just getting goosebumps hearing you tell that story. I think because it that that type of thing, for lack of better uh, wording, uh, is really the exception, not the rule. Like just to be able to have somebody who can see the opportunity among the challenge just is really a beautiful thing. And I know you say maybe I'm giving you more credit than you deserve, but I think you do deserve a fair amount of credit for just being open and receptive and understanding that, all right, these are the situations we're facing, and here's how we can figure out how to maybe not overcome them, but work within those limitations to make this thing work. And I think more often than not that isn't the case with people. So that's where my appreciation comes in.
and I think you're right that, a lot of people don't see it that way. I guess that's kind of just how I like, especially at work, I'm still a manager, just not at AT&T anymore, but everything is figure outable is something we say at work a lot.
Hmm.
And it's true. So whether, it's a matter of needing something more accessible or that you had something come up and you need to take time off or, everything's figure outable. And I think that if more people, especially people in my position, took the time to think that way and to see the value that people provide regardless of any physical disabilities, that I think our society would be more enriched in a way because I mean hiring Josh at AT&T is still one of the best decisions I ever made, and not for the store but for me and hopefully for him too, because like the store would be slow and we would just talk about so much and we disagree about things, and I learned so much, and that's when my worldviews really started changing, and I wouldn't have had any of that if he hadn't come to work with me. And I benefited so much from him working at AT&T, and that's because even though he had physical disabilities, we figured out how to accommodate those, how to make sure that he could still come to work, or covering shifts if he couldn't come to work, or giving him a ride if the bus was running late. Those little things were just they were all super minor problems compared to the value
Right.
of getting to spend time with him. And that's really coming back to, that value that people inherently have, regardless of their physical disabilities or mental health issues or anything else. And if people treated other people like they just have value, like right out the gate, you have value, then we as a society would be in such a better place because we wouldn't have those blinders on anymore that tell us, somebody else has a physical disability, so they can't be hired here, or, oh, they must um, be lazy and living off the government because they're in a wheelchair or something like that. We're
Mm-hmm.
so quick to judge and to see any blocker as being, a complete like no, instead of an opportunity to figure things out and problem solve. And it's disappointing to me.
No, I agree, and I do have to say, I mean, Josh um, was great for that type of conversation of things bigger than himself and the world at large, and getting you, not you specifically, I say you as the general, uh, but getting you to think outside of your societal norms and see things from another perspective, and get insight on things from a different source, and a different way. And I mean, it's provided so much value to me that I will forever take with me. And um, I know just in seeing the responses that uh, were attributed to him after his passing, uh, you and I are not alone in having been impacted by him.
Yeah. And we talked sometimes, and it was always mind-boggling to me that I don't know that he ever realized how many people he truly affected for the better. And being somebody, I don't know a lot of people in Josh's circle, but I feel like I can confidently say I'm one of the people that he probably affected the most. Not, saying I'm top, but probably like top 5, top 10. And just the value that he had, and not just had, but like he spread that value to other people. He didn't just say, "Oh, I have value." And probably that's part of where his, I don't want to say value in a bad way here, like, but like his value came from giving value to other people, to showing them that they had value and that he valued their relationships. And um he just, man,
No,
he's an
I
amazing person.
yeah, no, I mean, I get it. I mean, I still go back because I'm a glutton for punishment, and I will still go back to his page and look at all the comments that were left. And the one thing that I take away is that every one of the people that had something to say, the the emphasis was, he made them feel seen, feel heard, feel important, and like they were the they were the top number one, you know on the friends list. You know what I mean? It's just he made everybody feel like they mattered. And if we could all if we could all just do like a fifth of that, we'd be in a good place.
I agree. The world really needs more Joshes.
And like I said, I don't claim to know much of his social circle, but again, we probably know the same amount of people. Um, but because of that, like he brought all of this, like you and I would not be having this conversation
Nope.
tonight if not for you having hired him, and then him and you being in Vegas, like that whole chain of events, like all because he existed. Like when you talk about bringing, value, um, there's our lives are so much better because he existed.
Right.
And if by doing this little podcast or Twitter space, um, can continue that, I'm I'm happy to do that. I know we're coming up on 8 o'clock, so I don't want to keep you very much longer. I do want to say that how much I appreciate your time and your speaking on some of these topics, and hopefully we can do this again
Yeah.
at some point. I don't know, schedules and things along those lines, but I have thoroughly enjoyed getting a chance to catch up with you more than just a Facebook message here and there. So yeah, I'm gonna let you head out for the evening. I know you have parental responsibilities and other things that you need to take care of, but I do want to just say how appreciative I am of you and your time, and I hope that we get a chance to have discussions like this again. And yeah, just thank you. I appreciate it.
Well, and thank you so much. I completely agree. It's so fascinating to look back on lives and realize like that one choice that, hey, want a job text led to all of this. Like it was a text message that
Mhm.
led to all of this. And just looking back, it's crazy to see how everything has come together the way it has. But I want you to know I so much value our friendship and thank you for always reaching out to check in on us and, um, helping me kind of deconstruct my own biases about especially accessibility. And for having me in this space. I would love to be here again as often as you want me. This conversation has been reminiscent of the conversations I'd have with Josh, where, we just talk through things and give our own perspectives, and we both come away from it a little bit more knowledgeable than we were before.
Yeah,
And I really appreciate that.
yeah.
So thank you.
Oh, absolutely. It's I'm thrilled that you were as receptive as you were to this idea, because this is exactly what I wanted to do. Is have these maybe sometimes difficult conversations, and yeah, just see where people are on them, and get different perspectives. And I'll just speak real quick to one thing that Josh helped me with was um, being able to see another side of, you know, a circumstance, and not feel like, well, my opinion is the only opinion that's right here, and um, you can't make progress without being open minded in a conversation. So I really am appreciative of uh, us being in a space where it doesn't seem like a lot of people are, where they can have a conversation without arguing in disagreement. Um, so I just really appreciate that we can get together like adults and have maybe differing opinions and not be upset at each other because we have differing opinions.
Absolutely. Regardless of our opinions, you still have the same amount of value to me. I mean, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
you're not less valuable just because we disagree about something. But absolutely, it's important to hear differing opinions though, because otherwise you never grow. Like you said, you've got to be open to new things or else you become stagnant. And that's something that Josh taught me as well. Really, that open mindedness and seeing things from another perspective and challenging my own beliefs. And that's something I never want to stop doing.
Yeah, there are times I do want to stop that, but
Okay, fair.
I think it's kind of a disservice to him. So then I have to kind of snap myself back together. But um,
I'd like to bury my head in the sand. I'm really tired of growth sometimes,
yeah,
but
it sucks to put it very mildly sometimes. But no, you're doing great things, and I know he is very proud of all that you've been able to accomplish in the time that he's, you know, been gone. And yeah, I don't want to dwell on him being gone, but again, um, getting over my words now. Yeah, it's been great to catch up, and I hope that we can do this again. And we'll touch base, I'm sure, after this ends, and figure out, another day and time maybe to do this. And looking forward to trying to get more people that were in Josh's circle to be involved, and continue this conversation, and other conversations involving the disability community. There's always something happening, and there's always new things and new laws being passed and what have you. So there's always going to be something to speak on as far as disabilities. So I look forward to continuing this conversation in whatever way it develops. And I thank you so much. One, not just for tonight, but again for your friendship as a whole. It's been such a value to me over the last 7 or so years. So it is very much appreciated, and I thank you.
Likewise. Very much so. Sorry again for all the technical difficulties at the beginning, but it's a very good conversation and I appreciate it.
Yeah, no. Now that we got it figured out, I think
I think
we go
we
forward
go forward
a little bit
a little
smoother.
bit. Yes. Figured it out. We evolved.
We evolved, and like I
We
we
grew. That's it. That's what we did. We grew.
we grew, and like I would always say at the end of the podcast that Josh and I did, it's no matter what life throws at you, you got to keep on rolling, and I think I think this this Twitter space tonight was evident of that. Yeah, we had some challenges, but we kept through it and got it figured out, and we'll be back hopefully pretty soon. I don't know what the future holds, but we got a lot of work left to do.
But we'll keep rolling through it.
Yeah, absolutely. So you have yourself a good night, and we will talk. We'll talk soon.
Awesome. Thanks so much, KB. Take care.
Thank you so very much. Have a great evening.
You too. Bye.